appointed 3 warriors to help oversee tribal matters for the entire Persian nation. Cut Cheese, whose Indian name means man who makes disgusting smell. Shamu, whose Indian name means man who thinks he is a large sea mammal. And Daniel, who had no Indian name because he was from the tribe of Judah. Shamu and Cut Cheese were jealous of Daniel because the chief liked Daniel very much. He was respected by all the people, even though his name didn't mean anything cool. Shamu and Cut Cheese began to plot and scheme behind Daniel's back. They wanted to turn Big Chief Darius against Daniel, but they knew it would be difficult since Daniel was a faithful man. After huddling for a moment, they gave each other a special secret Indian handshake. Then they let out a loud war whoop that terrified the other Indians in the camp. And for just a few brief moments, they danced a "We're Gonna Nail Daniel" dance. That very night, Shamu and Cut Cheese went to Big Chief Darius. It was clear from the expression on their faces that they were on the war path. As they entered the teepee of Big Chief Darius, he was busily weaving baskets and working on other Indian handicrafts. As he worked, he whistled to the melody, "1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians." Shamu and Cut Cheese fell at the feet of their chief, and together shouted, "Oh, Big Chief Darius, may you live forever.
Oh, Big Chief Darius, may you live forever.
We have an idea for you."
We have an idea for you.
You see, they wanted Chief Darius to make a new law that forbade any person from praying to any god or man except to Big Chief Darius. Furthermore, if a person did pray to any god or man except the chief, within the next 30 days, that person would be thrown into the den of lions. Big Chief Darius nodded thoughtfully for a moment, scratched the stubble of his beard, nodded some more, scratched some more, nodded some more, and then dozed off. When he awoke a moment later, he said, "How? How?" Shamu and Cut Cheese looked at each other, then replied in unison, "We just told you how, Kimosabe."
We just told you how, Kimosabe.
Meanwhile, back in his teepee, Daniel was practicing some animal calls to use with his next hunting party. First, he did a bird call. Then the call of the buffalo. Then a duck call. Then, just in case the hunting party got lucky, the call of an elephant. And then his favorite, just in case the hunting party got unlucky, the call for help. At that moment, a messenger ran into Daniel's teepee with news of the chief's edict. A messenger ran. Daniel read the new law, and you could see on his face that he was confused. Then he was surprised, then angry, then worried. "What's an edict?" he asked.
What's an edict?
The messenger told him, and then Daniel realized that the chief had outlawed prayer. At least prayer to the one true God. So Daniel decided to do yet another one of his favorite calls. He knelt out in front of the door of his teepee where everyone could see him, and he called on the name of the Lord.
Dear Lord!
And every day, 3 times a day, Daniel continued his habit of praying right out in front of his teepee where all could see him. It wasn't long before word of Daniel's disobedience reached Chief Darius. The chief was majorly saddened. In fact, he became delirious with grief and began to ramble incoherently in his native Indian language. You could tell Chief Darius loved Daniel very much. But Shamu and Kutchis reminded him of the law he had made. Both of them grabbed one of Darius' hands and said, "O chief, may you live forever, and may you not even doze off. Don't forget about the law you made. Daniel must go to the den of lions." The chief frowned a deep frown. He knew that if he backed down now, people would think he had been lying. He didn't want to do it, and he hoped against hope that Daniel's God would save him. But big Chief Darius had no choice but to throw Daniel into the den of lions.
Get off of me.
Darius wept bitterly as he pushed Daniel inside the den. Then the chief dozed off again. It was a long night for the chief. He tossed and turned in his royal teepee. He snored loudly, then softly, then whimpered like a baby, then snored again. In the den of lions, meanwhile, Daniel faced a bunch of hungry lions, licking their chops and pacing around him. First, he used sign language to try to convince them that they weren't really hungry. And besides, he wouldn't taste good. Then he tried communicating to the lions in their own language and roared his friendliness at them. They still paced around him, licking their chops. Daniel asked them, "Have you guys ever heard of the Chronicles of Narnia? It's a really cool story about this very, very kind lion named Aslan."
Have you ever guys heard this Chronicles of Narnia? Oh wait, you can't read.
But nothing worked. The lions still circled him, and they were drooling by now. In desperation, Daniel tried his bird call, his buffalo call, then his elephant call. The only response he got from the lions were growls and mean looks. So he finally did the only other call he knew, his Lord call. He knelt and asked God to save him.
Dear baby Jesus, please save me. I need your help.
But Big Chief Darius hurried to the den the next morning, and he couldn't believe his eyes. The lions were sitting quietly with Daniel, and they were playing rock, paper, scissors. The chief was so overjoyed, he gave Daniel a high five, and he gave all the lions a high paw. And not one wound was found on Daniel, because he had trusted in his God. Shamu and Kutchis, for their betrayal, Darius threw both of them into the lion's den. Immediately the lions jumped on top of the men and began breaking their bones and growling mean things to them in lion language. Shamu and Kutchis tried to yell for help. Shamu even began making what sounded like whale sounds. But it wasn't long before the lion's den turned into the lion's rumpus room, and then the lion's kitchen. Big Chief Darius was so amazed that Daniel's God had kept him safe that he gave Daniel a new Indian name, Dances with Lions. And the chief issued a decree to the whole Persian nation, Daniel's God is Lord, let everyone worship him.